Set 14 is almost here and I want to share my first impressions with you. I was able to playtest Set 14, but no worries, in a few days you will be able to test it yourself for 2 weeks on the PBE server, or you can wait until it officially releases on the 2nd of April. The theme for the new set is the fight for Cyber City. You will encounter the Project Skinline, Street Demons, Debonair or Battlecast, all fighting for control. I already planned a ton of new content for Set 14, both videos and shorts, so you don't miss out on any new discoveries. Now let's take a look at what Set 14 has to offer. There is quite a lot to cover, especially surrounding the set mechanic called Hex. If you played Set 11, then you will quickly realize that Hex are quite similar to encounters. But this time, you won't waste your time working out with Set to become bigger, because compared to the old encounter system, I think Hex bring a lot more interesting variety to the table. For example, your augment selection can be hacked in a lot of different ways. Sometimes your left augment will have a certain theme, like trade augments or economic augments, and you get multiple rerolls to find one that you like. You might also end up having to make a decision between a gold augment and 2 silver augments, and yes, this can result in you having 4 augments instead of 3. Sometimes you will also find hacked PvE minions that drop a green orb, which can contain bonus health, a large amount of loot orbs, or special components that have an integrated Pandora effect and can reroll into any other item component. From time to time, you will also encounter glitched carousels similar to Set 8.5, either with units holding bonus items or even crazier effects like item anvils replacing their units. My favorite hacks that I've seen so far are the Black Market augments and the Prisoner's Dilemma. The Black Market hack grants you access to augments that are otherwise impossible to obtain. For example, in this game, I got Blue Battery, which grants my units 10 mana after each cast, which works on top of Blue Buff to create a perma-casting Yuumi. While you won't be seeing prismatic Black Market augments very often, they will create very memorable games. Riot even brought back some fan favorites like Think Fast, but also added new variants of augments that can only be accessed this way. The Prisoner Dilemma hack is absolutely hilarious. All the players have to make a choice between taking 10 gold or splitting 30 gold with every player that chooses the second option. I've already seen some players receive 30 gold all by themselves, and there is no doubt in my mind that this hack will become a fan favorite. There are still a lot more hacks that I haven't mentioned yet, but I think at this point you should have a general idea on what you can expect from the set mechanic. On average, you should see around 3 hacks per game, and they will mainly influence the early and mid game. Next, let's talk a bit about traits. Nowadays, it's common for each set to have a dedicated loot trait, and Set 14 takes inspiration from Set 10 and is more or less bringing back the Heartsteel trait. This means activating the trait allows you to collect points with a loose streak, but also by taking down enemy units. Something that's different is that you can only cash out once, and the cash out timings are set in stone in stage 3-3, 3-7, 4-3 or 4-7. There is no emblem for the trait, so similar to Chem Barons at the end of Set 13, you will have to find all of the necessary units quickly if you want to have a chance at the maximum cash out. If you prefer playing tier 1 reroll, then you should definitely try out the Nitro trait, because their star level will feed more stacks into your summoned robot. If you gather 200 stacks, it will transform into a very tanky 4-star T-Hex that will help you to stabilize your frontline. One of the new prismatic traits is called Anima Squad, and it's heavily inspired by the Swarm game mode from last year. Going deeper into the trait lets you choose weapons that support you throughout the fight. These weapons will scale with each stage and the star level of your units to keep them relevant into the late game. If you find 2 emblems and every Anima Squad unit, then you get to choose between 2 game-winning upgrades. This means if you start the game with an Anima Squad target dummy, it's definitely recommended to aim for the chase trait. I promise you won't regret it. All of this is good and well, but you can't have a good TFT set if the units are boring, so what kind of carries can you expect to see in the upcoming months? For tier 1, without a doubt, the biggest highlight has to be Shaco. He has the Syndicate and Slayer trait. Syndicate simply means that you want to pair him with 2 additional Syndicate units, so you receive the Kingpin head and use it on Shaco to unlock his special ability. Normally, Shaco would simply deal damage to his target, but as the Kingpin, he will teleport behind the lowest health enemy within a 4 hex range. He also has a stacking passive, granting him bonus AD for every kill. In a playtest, it was not uncommon to see Shaco gather a ton of AD and one-shotting the enemy carries. But to reach these numbers, you have to max out the Slayer trait for the bonus AD, making most of your team into a glass cannon that will struggle to survive in late game fights. You can expect most of the reroll comps to focus on tier 2 instead. Here you can play something like Graves with Golden Ox and Executioner, which can be surprisingly powerful thanks to Golden Ox granting him a ton of bonus damage. LeBlanc is also incredibly powerful with an ability that becomes stronger with every cast, and the Strategist trait granting her bonus damage and making your frontline more tanky. Naafiri is also making a return and plays quite similar to Nocturne reroll. If you find yourself with a rapid fire cannon or any range increase item, you definitely want to aim for Exotech reroll with Naafiri as your main carry. Other units like Jhin, Twisted Fate, Vayne or Viger will also see some play throughout the set, so you will end up with a lot of different comps if you enjoy playing tier 2 reroll. Tier 3 units on the other hand have it a bit harder, partly because staying on level 7 to finish your 3 stars can often go horribly wrong. Nevertheless, you still have a lot of powerful units to choose from. For example, Jinx is the AD counterpart to LeBlanc and will definitely see a lot of play in a Street Demon setup. While backline Elise in set 13 was mostly a meme, she is a lot more dangerous in set 14 with great traits and reducing magic resistance by a flat amount with every cast. As for tier 4 units, you will encounter a lot of familiar faces. Misfortune and Xayah make a return as AD casters, while Aphelios and Zeri are more focused on attacking their targets into the ground. In my opinion, Zeri has a really fun ability, making her dash and creating clones, which in my opinion is the best version of Zeri we've had so far in TFT. Once you read through the abilities of all tier 4 units, you will quickly realize that positioning will become a lot more important compared to previous sets. Both Zed and Vex have abilities that allow them to bypass the enemy frontline and quickly take out the enemy carries. Ziggs, on the other hand, will deal damage in a specific pattern that tries to hit the maximum amount of units possible. You should not be lazy with your positioning in set 14, because it's quite easy to punish players in late game who aren't paying any attention to their boards. Speaking of late game, you will need the help of legendary units to help you win your lobbies, and there is a lot to choose from. Arguably, the best filler unit in the game is Zac, who doesn't have any traits. You can make him stronger by buying blobs in your shop, granting him bonus HP and AP. His ability is quite annoying, as it's not only dealing damage, but also stunning enemy units and healing himself. After Zac drops low, he splits into 2 copies with 50% health. These copies get to keep their items, which means there is a lot of fun to be had with augments like High Voltage. Besides Zac, you can also use Garen as a filler unit, because he has one of the most unique traits in the game. Fielding him for a few player combats lets you choose a special trait mod. This mod acts like an emblem, except it doesn't grant +1 to the trait or consume an item slot. This means, in theory, you can run something like 6 Bastions with Garen and then make one of your backline carries into a Bastion to keep them alive longer. Unfortunately, you only get to keep the mod if Garen stays on your board, so you need to make sure that you have a trade worth sharing before committing to the strategy. Aurora is also a standout legendary that will be a core part of most late game boards. She is able to swap herself with a unit on your bench and becomes the first unit in TFT that is able to fight from your bench. She also has a very powerful AoE ability, making her one of the most dangerous AP units in the late game. I pretty much covered most of the important points, though I do want to briefly mention some of the system changes. All the PvE monsters have been replaced. For example, in the early stages, there are only ranged drone units, which might open up the door for more units to defeat the early stages by themselves. There's also a massive change to frying pan emblems. The 8 different emblems that you can build with the frying pan now have additional bonus effects to make them more interesting. For example, the marksman emblem also reduces enemy armor by a flat amount if the holder deals physical damage. You can pair this with a unit like Misfortune or Samira to heavily reduce the armor of the entire enemy team. You should also keep an eye out for the rapid fire emblem because it grants 2 additional range, making it perfect for Naafiri reroll since you will be playing Zeri anyway. Sadly, it doesn't look like there will be any updates to normal craftable items, so for now we are still stuck with the Steadfast Heart. It also looks like all the artifacts will stay the same, and with the removal of most artifact augments, you shouldn't expect to see a lot of artifacts outside of the occasional portable forge game, or if you have a rare encounter like Artifact Anvil or Loot Subscription. While initially I had a bit of a hard time in my first few games, Set 14 quickly grew on me the more I played it, and I'm quite certain that there is a ton to discover hidden beneath the surface. If you want to see Set 14 gameplay, I recommend checking out my Twitch stream or my second YouTube channel, where I will be testing everything Set 14 has to offer. I hope you learned something, and see you next time.